Okay. Wonderful. So this is going to be a very interesting one. I'm super excited to be interviewing you because parenting is a big subject. Like, it's so vast. I feel like it's the same as just literally talking about stress. Like, it's so all encompassing. So I'm really excited to get into some of the things you've learned and you help people with. And yeah, in my mind, I was just kind of reading a few little things. And okay, anyway, I won't get ahead of myself. I'm just really excited to hear your points of view and hear some of the things you've come up with. And let's start first and foremost. You can introduce yourself and then tell us a bit about your journey and how you came to do what you do now.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, my journey. So, my name is Christina. For those who are watching, don't know me, I am a positive parent educator. And I never thought, I didn't even know what this was. Never. I think most people before they have kids don't really think much about parenting. And yeah, I was having a completely different life. And then when I got pregnant, because I'm a person who I always need to know everything about everything, and I'm a control freak. So then when I got pregnant, suddenly I felt like I was losing control. That because I felt like it started all very simple. I made a search which was how to bathe the baby. And oh my God, there was no answer. I still today don't have an answer. And then you start reading all these things, and everyone has a different opinion. And then I'm very science focused. So I started reading research papers. I was pregnant, 2 months pregnant, 3 months pregnant, searching research papers about how to bathe the baby. Crazy. And even on research papers, you will get very contradicting information. So you will get some that will say you should wash just with water, others say with water and an oil, others say, so it's crazy. And I started realizing, and this was just one tiny little thing of the sea of parenting. And I started realizing that I spent my whole life learning stuff that are not really useful to my life. And this that I really needed, which is how to be a mom, no one had ever taught me. So I decided to learn how to be a mom. So while actually in the beginning, so I was pregnant, I was just, checking videos on YouTube, all those things, and informing myself. And I started learning about all these parenting things like Montessori and, all these things. And at the time, I heard about positive parenting, and I was like, that's how I want to do it. That doesn't sound hard. I can do it. Of course, I am a nice person. I can be nice to my kid, right? So then time passes. My son was like maybe 1 year old. And when it was around that time, that's when I started noticing I was becoming a screaming mom. And I was not raised by screaming parents. So I felt like I was really failing, because we all think that that we can do better than our parents. And then sometimes we realize we are doing worse. And that makes us really, there's nothing worse that you can tell someone than you're becoming your father, right? Or your mother. So
Yep.
definitely. And if you're worse than them, right? And that's when I remembered, I remember reading something about positive parenting. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to make a course on this. So in the beginning, I just wanted to do a course for myself. But I wanted to do one that was focused on early childhood, because most of the courses that you find online are very general. And it's very different to take care of a toddler who's 1 year old than it is to take care of a 15-year-old teenager. So I felt like things were not really being the help that I was looking for. I also wanted to really have more like the science part of it and really go more deep into why children act the way they do. So I ended up doing a course for kindergarten teachers, which was the positive parenting, positive discipline early childhood certification. And this is a certification that the Positive Discipline Association gives to kindergarten teachers. And I was not a kindergarten teacher, but it just had everything I needed. It explained why children behave, the psychology of it, everything. So I did that, but just for myself. And I loved it. And in that course, there was an interesting exercise that was about why we are the way we are, that comes from us, the way we were raised. And now, that all comes from our own early childhood, because the first 6 years are so important in the development of personality and our basic beliefs. And so I was like, oh my God, I need to learn more about this because I can change myself. So then I did another course also from the positive discipline, which is about reparenting yourself. And I was like, I'm sold about this. I need to share this with other people. So then I did a certification, which is to be a parent educator, also from the positive discipline. And I started teaching parents. And yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Ah, that is a very interesting journey. And you know what, though? I think it is so important just for anyone watching this to understand, if they've never been in the coaching world or anything like that, the absolute best person, best coach you can get is someone who's done something for themselves. And so I love hearing that you're like, no, I did this all for me. And it's so wonderful. Now I decided to share it. I think that's like so perfect. And it actually, your story did remind me of, so for anyone watching, I will clarify immediately. I do not have children. I have always had the fur babies. But I do have like a ton of my friends and a ton of my massage clients and stuff would confirm that a dog is similar to a toddler. Not that I know people hate some people hate when I compare them, but I do because it's what I know. We do have nieces and nephews. It's not like I've never been around kids. I used to be the number one babysitter in my town when I was younger. So I'm not completely without children. I just don't personally, I have not birthed them. So I want to clarify, just so everyone knows. But it's funny when you say positive discipline, positive parenting. And this can be so extraordinarily difficult because we had a rescue dog. And long story short, we were his fourth owners. I think they estimated he was about 3.5. He had been previously beaten by at least one of his owners, yada, yada. So we were told immediately, you cannot use any form of negative discipline on him because he immediately shuts down and turns to aggression. And so positive discipline only. And I come from a family of spankers. Like we got yelled at, we got spanked, we had like all the timeouts. I was raised in the 80s. Conversation and talking, feelings weren't a thing. We didn't have feelings. And so I had to Google like positive discipline. And I'm like, okay, just be nice to this dog, right? That's easy. Same as you. I'm a nice person. I can do this. Oh, Lord, how many times I literally would walk away from him just like, and I'm like, no, 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 we need to figure this out. And so just for people who, same as you, like, oh, this is just be nice, positive, that can't be so difficult. No, Lord help you. When you get mad, being nice to this thing, creating your fury, it can be the most difficult thing in the world. So I'm very intrigued to hear more about this.
And what we were talking about, it's true. The biggest, the most important part about, like, whenever we think about how to get what we want is, I want my kid to do this, right? This is what we want. We think what we want is that the kid does what we want them to do. What we really want is to give them the skills and the understanding so that they understand why they shouldn't do that and how they should do it instead, so that throughout their lives they learn and they're not doing things behind their back, but they actually know why they are not doing it. But so this is what we actually want. But what we need is self-regulation. So the basis of positive discipline is self-regulation. It's about you regulating yourself so that you are not reacting mindlessly to your child, so that your emotions are not in charge of your parenting. Because otherwise, you are the same way that when you are overly emotional, you end up doing things you regret. This will definitely happen because you cannot access the rational part of your brain when your emotions are high. So this will definitely happen with your children, right? You will be just, and then they will learn from you. They will not learn how to self-regulate, and they will then repeat the same behavior that you do to them. They will repeat it to other people, to other kids, or they will do the opposite. They will become people pleasers. So many of us, as you said, were Gen X, millennials, right? Raised in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Many of us are like that, people pleasers. So this is very, very hard because we don't have this from ourselves. We didn't learn this while we were growing up. So now we have to do it, and it's really hard, as you are saying. It's not just about being nice, because when you are very mad, yeah,
It's like everything, every ounce of your being to walk away and like go in another room and not just be like, what is wrong with you?
and society wants you to do that. Society wants you to be like, punish that kid, scream at that kid. So you have your own body wanting to do that. You have the external, pressure of doing that, and you have to be like self-regulating and addressing the problem appropriately. And then you might even hear someone be like, that's why the kid is like this, is this gentle parenting nowadays.
I
So
have
annoying.
literally,
It's so
yes,
annoying.
I've literally heard that. And okay, so actually, I do have something interesting to ask you because there was, and I've experienced this myself, and I've been that person. We're in the grocery store and the kid is just out of control and the parent is ignoring them. Now, I asked one of my clients, because this was years and years ago. I said, yeah, I don't understand. Like, how I was raised, how I understand things is okay if you want to do positivity and you want to do conversation, but you still need to address the behavior. In my mind, ignoring it is not solving anything. But what my client had said was, well, when you give them the attention, it's like they're doing the negative behavior to get the attention. So by addressing their negative behavior, you're giving them the attention you want. So the best thing you can do is ignore it. Now, I didn't say it to her, obviously, but in my mind, I'm like, nah, no, I'm not buying it. No.
That is actually neglectful parenting. So when we
Okay.
are So positive discipline, or positive parenting is you have to be both kind and firm. You have to be both things. So the idea is that you need to impose boundaries, and you need to teach your child what is appropriate, because otherwise they will not learn, because it's our jobs as parents to teach that to our children, right? And we can do all these without spanking, screaming, shaming and all that. We can do this in a positive way. So for instance, in that situation, and I actually even have a guide that shows that exactly when you are in the supermarket and your kid is throwing a tantrum, how to go from that tantrum to the cooperation you want. So I will send it to you, and you can leave a link below if people want. So
yeah, I think that's amazing because when you're in your own house, you can kind of deal or not deal accordingly. But the last thing any parent ever wants is the tantrum kid in the store, in the mall, wherever. So I think that's amazing you have that. And I will definitely add that link. Okay, sorry, continue.
And what you were saying now, just now, that this is the worst we want, I totally believe that, because for me personally, the worst part of parenting is other people, for me personally. And I think that, and it's not just me, it's most people, they will react very differently toward their children when the other people are present than when they are alone with the child. Because we get all these, again, those beliefs that are so inside of us from our own early childhood, that tell us like, what are they thinking of me? Oh my God, oh my God. People that we will never see in our lives, because we are in a supermarket, we don't know these people, and we are treating our child worse than we would treat a mailman, because of people that maybe are even busy with their own lives, have nothing to do with us, maybe are not even judging us, it's all in our head maybe. Or even if they are not really people that are relevant to, they definitely are not as important to us as our little child. But because we have all these beliefs from early childhood, it's very, very, it's automatic. We don't even think about it. So the first thing is always self-regulation. We have to always self-regulate ourselves, because if we cannot self-regulate ourselves, we cannot access that rational part of our brains. And I'm sure in that part, you can help people much better than me. So I will move along from that part.
No worries.
So what helps me in case of self-regulation, for me, what helps me is to just block out all external stimuli. So I usually cover my eyes, and I just really focus my ears, and I focus my eyes on my son's eyes, so that I try really to block everything around me. And then one thing we can do is, when we are able to self-regulate ourselves, so we can take a few deep breaths or something, whenever we feel like we are able to access the rational part of our brain again, that's when we go to phase 2. And phase 2 is to bring our child's emotions also down, because again, they will not be able to access the rational part of their brains before their emotions are down. So the same way we need to self-regulate, they need to do it. And if it's already hard for us, imagine for a small child whose brain is underdeveloped and they don't have the skills. They don't even very often understand the emotions. They don't have names for them. They just don't understand. They just feel that, and they are reacting to their emotions the same way we, as adults with a fully developed brain, wanted to do. So imagine how hard it is for that tiny little kid.
Yes.
So
Actually,
sorry.
oh, I was just saying, I watched a really, really neat video about that. And this little girl must have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old. And she just is crying. And the dad did this amazing job of like, okay, what do you feel? She's just like, I don't know. And he's like, okay, why do you feel it? She's like, I don't know. And it was just such a good point of, yeah, these little tiny humans, they don't. It could be the first time ever she's actually thought about these tears and yeah, what's causing this? And it is such a good point to remember that they do need to learn. It's just, we're not bored. We're not little robots.
Yeah.
And
And
love
even
that.
us as adults, we need to learn that also. So imagine those tiny little kids. I mean, they really need that. They need that. And it's our job as parents to teach them, because these are life skills that I wish I had been told as a kid. It would make my life so much easier now. So it's our job. And this is very hard as a parent, again, because we are feeling all these emotions ourselves. And that's why it's so important that we self-regulate first. And we often don't know how to teach our children to self-regulate because no one taught us either. But we need to do.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've seen, I don't know if they're still really popular, but this was a thing for a while. I was seeing these videos on, they call it like scream therapy, and all these women going out to the bush and just like screaming their heads off and grabbing branches and beating things. And I was watching this video and I was like, and literally what pops into my head is these ladies need some emotional regulation. Holy crap. And all I could think is toddlers running around the house. And so I will say, I think it is kind of more our generations, we're getting a little bit older, where, yeah, we were just not taught these things. And I see all this proof of, unregulated adults just yelling and screaming. And I do think people maybe don't take this the wrong way, but, being offended, even like, oh, everything offends someone. Okay, you need to maybe think about what's happening. And because being offended is an emotional response. And I think it's just this great big bubble of interesting things happening. Now, I know you said we have to teach them and really guide them through this. So do you have any tricks for how to really, like that little girl who's, oh, why are you crying? Oh, I don't know. Like little tricks to help actually teach them what emotions are and how to kind of bring it down?
Yeah, so the first thing you have to think about is what helps you. So this, I always explain it like this. Imagine that you go to catch a train. So in this case, for instance, usually children, they are not doing a tantrum because they are bad kids, although many people think that it's because they are brats. It's because they are uneducated. But actually it's because there is a need that is behind that behavior. So there is some need that we need to find out what it is. And of course, the way we address the behavior always has to be referent to the need. So we always need to find out, to understand what the need is. So this is very important, of course, and that's why you often need also a little bit of help and it's a bit harder to do it by yourself, and it's easier when you have someone to help you. But of course, you can also try. There are many things that usually work, even if the child, regardless of the need, right? But again, it depends on the need. But usually there are these things that more or less always work. And one of them is empathy. Because when I lost my train, let's say for instance, I really, really wanted, I don't know, to catch that movie. And now we arrived at the cinema and I cannot enter anymore. And I'm really upset because I really wanted to do it and I cannot do it, right? It's the same. The kid wants a chocolate and we are saying no. So it's the same, for instance, in this case. So what we need to do is show empathy. The same way, If I arrive at the cinema and I'm like, oh my God, this is so unfair. And someone says, well, next time just come earlier. Or someone says, it's not that bad, you can go to the next one. So every time someone is like dismissing my feelings, or someone is like trying to fix them for me, these things make me even more mad.
I
Right?
would think because you feel unheard. They're not
Exactly.
understanding why you're upset. Yeah, isn't that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the same with children. If I tell a child like, well, but you have at home another toy that is exactly like this. Or if I tell the child, well, let's get the chocolate later. Now it's not a good time. This is not helping. It's not helping at all, because in that moment, the child is filled with emotions. So what we need to do is bring down those emotions. And the first step is empathy. So we say, oh, I can really see you wanted that chocolate. And I can understand why you want the chocolate, because it looks delicious. I love chocolate. I also sometimes really want to eat a chocolate. And so, and you only go to the end part after your child self-regulated. So if this didn't help yet, things you can help with is like hugging, or just touching, or if they are really very, very with their emotions still very high, one thing that also helps is make believe. So when we think, it's the same like when we are planning holidays, we release in us the same good vibes, good feeling, those endorphins, that when we are actually on holidays. Of course, not in the same, but it still helps. So we can talk about that, like, oh, which chocolate do you like the best? Oh, that one is really good. So all these things help their emotions come down. When you feel like your child is already calmer, so not screaming, not crying anymore, that's when you are able to access the rational part of their brains. So before that, it doesn't make any sense to say, you cannot have it because, or I told you no, I told you we would come to the supermarket, but no asking. All those things don't work. So after you are able to access the rational part of your brain, that's when you say, I, na 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 na, and na 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 na, kindness and firmness. So I know that you would really love a chocolate and it looks really yummy, and we cannot have a chocolate right now because we need to have lunch and we need to put healthy things in our tummy. Otherwise, if we put the chocolate, there won't be space there for the healthy things, and then our body doesn't get healthy.
Okay. I do
So,
love that. Is there significance using the and? Because my mom would have said but.
yeah.
So what's the significance between the difference? Because I feel that's important somehow.
Yeah, it is. So let's say, for instance, I tell you like this. Let's say something like, well, Sonia, it was really nice of you to offer me this, but this is really not something
I
for me.
feel rejected. Oh my God, I
Okay.
felt that pain. But
And I say, oh, Sonia, thank you so much for giving me this, and this is not really what I need right now. You feel more like I'm not dismissing the first part, because when we use but, everything we say before the but is like, okay, this blah, 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 but it's irrelevant, because when we say and, we are saying both things are important.
Yes, okay, I feel like this is going to be groundbreaking for some people, because literally as you said that to me, the butt was like this small little arrow, and I was like, I literally felt it. So I will say, guys, right now, pause this, go phone a friend, turn to your spouse, whatever, and literally practice this. See how it feels, because I feel like this is a game changer in itself. This is great. Okay, sorry. I'm
Yeah,
so.
and this and is not something that, because positive discipline is not something it's not something just for children. It's for every human relationship. So everything that we teach in positive discipline, there's actually, I'm not certified in that, but there's actually a positive discipline certification that is about helping couples. So it's kind of like couples therapy, but so teaching people to talk to each other. These tiny little tricks of that make a huge difference, right?
Yeah. Well, because we always, my boyfriend and I, long story short, my ex sister-in-law is one of these horrible, she stayed in high school, mean girls, like she's just terrible. There's one in every family. I know some people have too. But we always used to kind of laugh about her apologies because it would always be, I'm sorry, but here's why you made me do it. And we'd always like roll our eyes. So we actually used to make fun of the but never actually recognizing what the significance of it. Like we'd apply it to that one situation, but not as a, where else do I use but in my life? That is very interesting. I love it. I feel like it's an eye opener. Yes, for all of us humans of all ages.
Yeah, definitely. It's like one of the things, because of this that you were this example you were giving of the mean girl in your family. I call her the mean girl in your family now. So when we apologize to our children, and to every human being, again, applies to everyone, it's very important that we don't use that we are just apologize. So it's not an apology if I say, I'm sorry that I yelled at you, but you just drive me mad.
That's exactly it. You're negating the actual apology. Yes.
Exactly. So even if your child, I don't know, broke your phone and you're mad as hell and you just want to scream at your kid and all that, you have to remember that first, they are small children that are still learning self-control. So I teach parents of children ages 3 to 6. So they are already learning some self-control, but they still are struggling with it. And if you are dealing with a child under the age of 3, then for sure, they have no self-control. So if they broke your phone, it's not because they are awful, spoiled brats. It's because it's developmentally appropriate. They are exploring. So first, it's not their fault. It's probably your fault. So that's the first thing to remember. And
Don't
this is
leave it
really
where they
hard for us.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard.
That is a good point, because that is something I really struggle with. That's the first thing whenever I take on clients is they have to be ready to take responsibility for their lives. And it is shocking how many grown adults are not ready for this, and it's a society thing. And I don't know if part of it's these participation awards and everyone is so special and no one can do anything wrong, but we are taught like to be victims and nothing's ever our fault. But at the end of the day, yes, okay, the child broke your phone, but you left it where they could play with it. This little one's grabbing everything, probably putting it in their mouths and doing, like you said, they're exploring. So really, yes, they broke it, but you left it where they could grab it at the same time. Like you're the adult, right? Isn't that, same thing with like, even when we have the dogs, where I can't remember, something was on the floor and it's kind of like the joke where, yes, they should know not to just grab things. But I'm like, well, the floor is their domain. If you left it on the floor, I mean, what do you expect?
It's true, isn't it? I mean, we also need to remember that because we tend to see small children as, first of all, like our property, because we would not spank anyone else. We would not spank our mailman. We would not, but we feel like children, it's our property. We can do with them. I hear so much the parents say things, it's my child, I do whatever I want. I really hope that one day this is not true. I really hope that one day governments, and more fortunately throughout the world, I think I saw I actually made a video about this not long ago, and I have a really bad memory, but I think it's 60 countries, only 60 countries around the world where it's forbidden to spank your child. Even though this is physically abusive, but yeah, I'm not even going to, because it just leaves me. But what you were saying, you said something I wanted to touch on, and I forgot. Sorry, my memory is so bad.
That's okay. Was it taking responsibility? Was that part of it?
No, it was when you said that you only help people that want to be helped. The same is with parents. I refuse to talk with people that believe that spanking their kids or that authoritarian parenting is okay, because very often those people are like, I was raised like that and I turned out fine, and they didn't. They didn't turn out fine, but they refuse to acknowledge that their parents are also imperfect beings, because there are no perfect beings. And none of us becomes perfect just because we became parents. That doesn't exist. But we very often feel like it's disrespectful of us that it's dismissing all the good things our parents did for us when we say some of the things they did are not good and I want to do differently. So we just are like, well, I was raised like this, I turned out fine, but you didn't. Are you a people pleaser? Are you a bully? Because usually one of these two things you are.
Yeah, and I want to say it's hard to come by someone who isn't a people pleaser. So yes. I will just, on that note, for anyone watching, like, if the person has grown up spanking and they believe spanking is perfectly fine, but obviously they come to you because they need help. If they say to you, like, well, I do spank, I don't see it as necessarily a bad thing, but I'm open to learning, I still would love a chance to work with you. Is that the sort of mentality, like you're still okay working, or they have to be willing to swear off spanking?
So it was, I actually, that's an interesting question, because I had a person that this happened to me not long ago, and that's why I created that whole video. I created a whole video for like 20 minutes video explaining like what research says about spanking, because I think that everything in life you need to wanna learn. If you're willing to learn, so if you are, so in this case, for instance, it was a mom that I had actually, I was interviewing a person in my group, and we were talking about violent behavior. And that girl, that woman, that mother came to me and she said, well, now listening to you, I am thinking that maybe I shouldn't spank my child. I mean, I don't hurt them. It's just so that they learn. It's just a slap on the wrist. But now from this interview, I got the feeling that maybe I shouldn't be doing it. And that's when I created that whole video explaining why I shouldn't do it. And then she actually came to me and was like, oh my God, I had no idea. Thank you. I will never do it again. So I think, but you need to be open to this, because many people are not. Many people, they just have this mentality like, my parents raised me like this. I also once made an article that was about this. I raised my 10 kids through spanking and they all turned out fine. You know, that type of mentality, they are unable to see or to really put into, and then they make fun of gentle moms, which is really a bullying behavior that actually is a result for you being parented that way. So it's just so
well, and I find it interesting also because that sort of mentality, not being open, it also really now again, I'm not the parenting expert by any means, but in my opinion, it really negates seeing your own children as different individuals, because I have known, again, like I think through my boyfriend's side, we've like 12 nieces and nephews, and even then friends' kids. And you have the kids like my, crazy brother, who my mom used to break wooden spoons over, and he would still laugh at her and run away. And like she would just pull her hair out, not knowing what to do with this child, and nothing seemed to work. And then to the kids where you literally look at them and you're like, I am disappointed. And they start bawling, they run to their room, they punish themselves. You have to practically make them stop punishing themselves. So to just think, I'm going to spank everyone. Well, even like myself, I grew up with spanking. So even if you believe in that parenting technique, it's still not appropriate for every child, even if you believe it is a viable way to discipline. Because if you spank this gentle soul who's punishing themselves, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine, no, like at that point, I would almost call that abuse. But
I just want to say spanking is not a viable method in any way. And there are so many reasons why, and I'm happy to go over them. But also, I think that no parent wants to spank their children. I cannot believe that unless you're a bad parent, and I believe that most parents are not. They are trying to do the best they can with the knowledge and the tools they have. And yes, they might believe that spanking is an appropriate behavior or an appropriate tool because they were raised that way. But not just to mention all the damage that does, because spanking is so hurtful. It really changed. There's a study that they did recently that shows that spanking actually alters the brain. So the brain, your brain actually changes. Because
really?
especially in those first 6 years, It's really important, and all those values and core beliefs go inside you, you know. But anyway, I'm not even going to talk about all the damages that spanking does. I'm just going to explain why it doesn't work. So, and I'm going not to address just spanking, but any punitive behave, you know, discipline method. So authoritarian parenting. This includes screaming at your child, punishing your child, shaming your child, you know, all those things.
Would be like taking away a video game. Is that also punitive?
If it's done as a punishment, yes.
Okay.
So if you're doing that to punish, then it it's also authoritarian parenting. So all punitive behavior, what it does, imagine, let's give an example of the game, for instance. You said I was not allowed to play a video game, and I did it anyway because I want to do it, because I want to do it. Basically, children do things very often just because they want to do it. So that I want to do it. Maybe I don't have yet my self-regulation skills. Maybe I still deal with my impulse control, and impulse control is something that takes so long. Even teenagers have especially teenagers have a very hard time with impulse control, and they are still developing that skill.
Yeah, I believe till 25, actually, research shows.
So it's really something that we cannot blame them for doing, because it's just their developmental age. And what we need to do, once again, is help them to do that, to help them, you know, impulse control. It's our job as parents to teach them that, and to teach them how can they self-regulate themselves when they are feeling that impulse. And we cannot do that by removing the game, because what that when I remove the game and I say I'm punishing you, what teaches them is they did not learn that playing the game was bad because this or this and that. What they learned was that if mom catches you playing the game, you will be without the game. So they just start getting better and better at doing things in a way that you don't find out. So this is the skill that you are teaching them. This is not the skill that you want to teach them. On the contrary, because you want them, if they are ever in trouble, you don't want them to be like, my mom can never find out about this. You want the opposite. You want them to be like, oh my God, I'm going to ask my mom for help. Because you don't want them to turn into people that will give them bad advice, or substances that will be bad for them, or to leave everything inside, which is very, very damaging for their mental health. You need them to be able to ask for help. So if they screw up, they need to know that it's okay to come to you. So you're teaching them the wrong thing, and you're not teaching them the right thing, because what you wanted to teach them was why they shouldn't play video games now.
Well, sorry, and that is such a just like, it's a whole new way of looking at things for me, because again, I grew up being spanked, and it makes so much sense, because when you take it away, they've just had something ripped from them. But if you talk them through it and they physically go turn off the video, they have just successfully regulated themselves, building that skill. Whereas, when you just take the video game away, we've seen on, TV shows where they rip it out of the wall and all this dramatic stuff, but they haven't done anything themselves. Wow, isn't that so interesting? How incredibly
learn the self-regulation part, and they didn't learn why they shouldn't do it, so they will keep on doing it. They just learn that you don't like that behavior, so people pleasing. So I have to do things, always make sure that what I do doesn't bother people. Otherwise, bad things will happen to me. And they will learn the skills of doing things behind your back. And they will learn that they cannot come, that you will do bad things to them when they do a mistake, which is also, again, not what you want to teach them. So
and that's hilarious. Because that was how I grew up. I just became really clever at hiding things from them.
So that doesn't make any sense. It's not teaching them the skills you want to teach them. What you want to teach them is self-regulation skills and learning what is the correct behavior when I'm feeling those needs. So what you need to do, so in this case, for instance, it would be an older child. And again, I'm not specialized in older children, but it's more or less the same principle. You need to first empathize and be like, and with an older child, we can do this a lot by asking questions, because that makes them think. So we can say something like, oh, I can see that you're playing a video game. Was now the time to play a video game? What time is it now? What did we agree on? Hmm, you know? And then you don't force them to say, I'm sorry either, right? Because we don't want them to have this automatic, we want them to mean it, right? So we need to keep talking to them and getting the empathy. I understand that you really like playing that video game. It looks really interesting. Maybe one day we could play together. However, now it's not the time, because now you really need to study. Because now, you need to take the time to study in order to tomorrow be able to show what you did, your homework, to your teacher. Otherwise, it will get really late and you won't be able to do your homework. You will be stressed out. You won't sleep so good. Tomorrow you will feel worse. So you're explaining your child and you don't take away the game. Instead, you teach them why they shouldn't play the game, and they by themselves will. And the more, this might sound a bit like, the amount of time people tell me this would never work with my child. You never met my child. Oh my God, they would just start being like, go away, mom, or whatever. And of course, it's like going to the gym. If I'm fat, and I am, by the way, if I go to the gym and I'm there for 1 hour, I might not see many changes, but many little things are already changing. My mindset is changing. My body is slowly adjusting. It's tiny little things. If I go there
all the
tomorrow,
little seeds. Yes.
exactly. Tomorrow will be a tiny little bit easier than today. I won't feel as weird about seeing everyone there, And if I'm there for a month, it will already be much better. If I'm there for a year, and the same is with parenting and everything else in life, driving, everything. And you need to practice it. And the more you do it, the more, and especially if you have a small child, if you teach these things from the beginning, this will make teenagehood so much easier.
Yes. I know people I've talked to in the past about this, they will just say, oh, you don't have kids, you don't know. And I'm like, but it's not rocket science, guys. Do the work when they're young. You're going to have a good kid when they get older. So I love that you say that, because I wholeheartedly believe this is true also. But what also popped into my head with you giving that example of explaining to them why they have to do it now, you can't play this video game. This is literally just food for thought for all the parents watching. I deal with a ton of people. How many of us have procrastination issues? We leave things to the last minute. We're up till midnight trying to complete a project or do something because it's due tomorrow. And even, we think of our college days, and again, we're not sleeping now, we're stressed because all this drama around us, because we just didn't do the work when we should have. So you are essentially saving your child of having this horrible, slightly debilitating bad habit for the rest of their lives. Like, this is a huge game changer for them in adulthood. Because literally, that's, I think, the number one basis of a lot of business coaches is just getting people to stop procrastinating and do stuff when they should. And that right there basically, pretty much solves that problem. I need to do this because it needs to get done, so I'm not worried and I can sleep later and not be stressed and just have it done. And boom.
It's our job as parents to help our children learn these life skills, because they are having a hard time dealing with this, and if we don't teach them how to deal with them properly, they will learn by themselves, and very often in the wrong way. And one tool that actually might sound like it's crazy, but that sometimes we have to do as parents, is we cannot solve our children's problems. Sometimes they do need to, you told them about the game and you don't take away the game, and you explain them and you had the conversation, and maybe the next day they will have problems at school. And then when they do that, you don't say, see, I told you so. That's also not what you want to do, because if you do this, they will just learn how to hide when they screw up, to hide it from you, right? Instead, you show empathy. Oh, yesterday it was really fun to play that video game, wasn't it? I totally understand. This also happens to me sometimes. This is also something that is really important always to pass it along to our children, is that they are not bad people. This happens to everyone. because we often want to pass along this idea that we are perfect parents, that we don't make mistakes. But this is really wrong. We should tell our children. This happens to me often also. Sometimes I want to watch Netflix and I'm watching Netflix until 2 in the morning, and the next day I have such a headache at work. So I totally understand that need of like, oh, I really want to play the video game. And it really sucks now the next day having all these annoying things with school, right? So maybe what, and then you brainstorm, like what could you do maybe next time to try and the older the child, the more you ask questions and let them come up with the answers. The younger the child, the more you have to come up with ideas. So for instance, in the supermarket, after in the, going back to that example from before, when we taught our child to self-regulate, we already empathized, we already told them, and you cannot have it because this and that. The last step is to brainstorm solutions. So we would go to our children, to our child, and be like, so what can we do instead? And because they are very small, we need to give them suggestions. So we say something like, what about in the afternoon we go to that ice cream parlor that you love? Or what about in the afternoon we bake a cake together? Or what about, so things that are fun for them. And these are things, we do this. In the case of an older child, like the one playing the Game Boy, probably it's not Game Boy anymore, some other thing, then we would be more asking questions like, what do you think that next time you could do when you really feel like playing a game and you also need to do a work, in order to be able not to have a day like you're having today, you know, but always from a compassion, no judgmental. It has to be from that, otherwise they will not listen, because no one likes to listen to a wise ass, right?
Literally, yes. And I love that, because that is literally just teaching them problem solving skills, which is, I mean, in my opinion, invaluable as an adult. I feel like this is one of those things people really undervalue. I read a really amazing article. This was, again, like 10 years ago, about a mom that said, you might think I'm a bad mom, but please don't help my child. And it was about her daughter, you know, the rope ladders in the parks. Her daughter was struggling to get up this rope ladder. She wasn't doing a good job. She was not successful. And she noticed other moms would come and pick her daughter up and put her on the platform. So this was a great big long post article about, I am teaching my daughter to solve her problems. Either she will find an alternative route up to the platform, or she will figure out how to climb the rope. If she can't climb it, she's clearly not ready to be on the platform. So you think you're helping, but you're not. You're disabling her by not letting her problem solve and build her skills in this fashion. It was such a great article. I shared it. It was funny. It did not get a lot of likes. And it's just this overly compassionate, as especially I feel like the maternal instinct, just being a nice human being. Oh, you need help, I'll help you. But it's that, you know, like I tell my clients, following the thought process all the way to the end, you're not helping, you're actually hindering their mental growth. And I think that is such an important thing of really, I don't know how to be too nice about it, but there's a lot of people that cannot problem solve or critically think in our day and age right now. And so I think how important this skill is. And it is, yeah, I can only.
What you're talking about is called learned helplessness. That's the name for that. And this is when we are telling, we do that a lot, unfortunately, when we are parents of small children, because we have a life. And it's also very important to remember that everything I'm saying, it's not like you have to do this all the time, right? I really focus on telling parents that it's 51% of the time. That's the times when you do all this that I'm saying. And come to terms with the fact that 49% of the time you're screwing up your kid, being a bad parent. This is normal because we are all human beings and by definition imperfect, right? So it's just a normal thing. But during those 51% of the time, when you catch yourself and you're like, no, now I'm going to work on the 51% of the time, it's really important that we are not constantly teaching our child that they are not good. So, and we do this unconsciously. Whenever they are putting on their jackets and we are like, oh, you're taking too long, here, I do it. You're basically teaching them that they are not able to do by themselves. Whenever they want to help you with something, like today my son wanted to bring the plate filled with spaghetti to the living room, and my heart was like, oh my God, the whole spaghetti is going to be everywhere. I'm all stressed out my day. And I had to really, self-regulate and be like, I'm going to trust him. And if this falls on the floor, we will clean it and life will go on. But again, 51% of the time, if I was really stressed out and I really couldn't afford, then I might have said, no, let me do it. But the 51% of the time, and this means more than half of your day, which is not, doesn't, more of half of the time you are with your child, right? Because it's not really your day. Then you should really try your best to, show them that you trust them. You trust that you can do this. And if you need help, I'm here. You can ask them, do you need help? For instance, in the case of the playground, it's very important that if we are feeling, because we all as moms feel that, oh my God, it's going to fall down, right? Instead of saying, careful, careful. And I say careful also, like I'm also not perfect. But whenever I catch myself, I change the careful to, do you feel safe? So that you teach your child to, by themselves, understand the situation. Is this safe? Is this not safe? Am I okay? Do I need help? And then I always say, if you need help, I am here. Just call me. So this way you teach them to find out if a situation is safe by themselves. And of course they will fail because they are learning the same way we as grown-ups still fail, even though we are grown-ups. And if they need help, to ask for help, because asking for help is such an important skill.
Yes. And that, again, that is like, I swear to God, sometimes half my posts are about asking for help, because in our society, we've made it this horrible 4-letter word, which is just ridiculous. But your story there reminded me of another story I read about where this, she was one of my clients' husbands. Oh, it's great. So they had this big deck. They live out in a farm, and their little son was like 4 years old, and he decided he was going to go be a GI Joe. And for all the super young people out there, they're kind of like the, military parachuters, yada, yada. So he grabs a Safeway bag, the old plastic ones, and he's going to go parachute off the deck. So dad's like, what are you doing there, bud? Follows him out. And his son goes, there's a 10-foot drop on one side of the deck. And he's like, hey, bud, just maybe, do you think maybe you've never done this before? Let's come over to this side of the deck. It was like a 3 or 4 foot drop. Let's try it over here first, just to make sure you know what you're doing. And the kid's like, that's a good idea. Okay. So he goes over, he jumps off, he falls, he hurts his leg, and he kind of hobbles. And the dad's like, how'd it go? He's like, oh, nope, not good, Dad, not good. And he just walked back in the house. He's like, all right, cool. But he let him, in a safer manner, try this out, test the waters. And I know this is something I talked about, again, over a decade with my massage clients, about that learning, like even as adults, like how many times we disagree or we don't. I have one client, Lord love her, she's amazing. She's like, I don't believe you. She says this to me a lot. I don't believe you. I'm like, well, give it a go. Next week she comes back. She's like, okay, you're right. Where we just have this innate thing that we have to learn by doing. So
Yeah.
I love that if you teach us at an early age, do you feel safe? Become aware of your environment, become aware of yourself, like building awareness. Oh my God, how many people I work with about building awareness. Oh, your job could put my job out of business for the future. It's amazing. And yeah, that's it. That's just such an amazing thing to, instead of just sitting there worrying, ask them to take responsibility and control. Do you feel safe? Like, where am I? Do I feel safe? What's happening in my life right now? Like,
I just want to say, my job, like helping parents of little kids, will never put. You know why? Because we are imperfect. We will always screw up our kids, and it's really important that we come to terms with this. And this is something that I really emphasize so much, because when we are focusing so much on all that we do wrong, which, by the way, is the way our brain works. We always focus on what we do wrong. We are unable to have this growth mindset as parents, where we are like, okay, I screwed up. That was the 49%. Now I'm going to work on the 51%. Instead, we go to bed feeling like crap. Our kid thinks it's their fault, because especially small children, they are very egocentric. This is it's a developmental thing. So they really believe that everything that happens in the world is because of them or for them. It's really true. It's just the way they are developing. So when you scream at them, it's really important that you afterwards explain them that you screamed at them. It was not because of them. It was because you could not self-regulate. And that's where, again, the sorry, you cannot say, oh, I'm so sorry I screamed at you, but you drive me crazy. No, it has to be like, I was mad, so it has nothing to do with you. I was mad and I screamed at you, and that's not okay. No, you don't deserve that anyone screams at you. We don't scream when we are mad at people. There are so many ways that I could have handled that, and I didn't, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I screamed at you. That was not okay. It's not okay. It's normal to be mad. Sometimes mom is mad, but it's not okay to scream. And I always love you. Even when I'm mad at you, I always love you. It's not because of you. You are a good kid. You are not a bad kid. You just did something that needs a little bit of guidance. And that's how we have to think.
Yeah,
Children are not bad kids. They just need guidance.
yes. Well, and because literally they know next to nothing until we teach them. So it is so incredibly important. I 100% agree. And it's funny because even like again, a good part of my job with my clients is teaching them that, or helping them realize, when someone has a bad reaction, I always call it responding versus reacting, because reacting, when I talk about it, is an emotional response, unregulated. Emotional reaction, unregulated. A response is something we have thought about and we're choosing to do. And so, again, toddlers react. It's emotional, it's unregulated, it's instant. And hopefully, us regulated adults can respond. And I love that. And I think, because again, I tell my clients, like, when someone yells at you or they have this reaction, or it has nothing to do with you. That's a reflection of them, some story they're attaching to the situation that happened, and they're reacting in whatever sort of way. But that's kind of I always call it, that's a them problem. So I love that. Again, we're teaching these kids these skills we need as adults. They're so hard to learn as adults. Yeah, I think that's so important. And even, like I tell my clients with the judgment thing. So we half the things we do is kind of very, very similar, if not the same, which I also love because it's for completely different purposes. And I love this. Who cares what we did? We just did something, we didn't like it. We're upset that we did it. We maybe apologized. That wasn't okay. Okay, great. But there's no shame, there's no judgment, there's no guilt, because we're just going to choose to do better next time. We're going to learn the lesson. What triggered us? What state were we in? How did we do this? And just do better. And I feel like that's so important to, again, teach those kids. Oh my God. Think of how different we would be if we were raised like that.
Yeah, that's the thing that you were saying right now about we believing that we are responsible for other people's feelings, that they are acting because maybe they are mad at us for something we did. This is something that comes from our early childhood, because we learned from our parents that every time they were mad, it was because of us, because we are bad kids, or because we have to be perfect. And if we are not perfect, then bad things, people won't like us, and we are always worried about the way what we do, what is the impact it has on other people, because we were raised that way. We were raised that whenever I do something, mommy will get mad, I will get spanked, I will get punished, she will scream at me, or even she will just say, I'm so disappointed in you. That's, even that alone is just being a narcissistic parent. We all do it. We all do it. I hope I don't do it, to be honest. Really hope so. But we were raised that way, and it's normal that we will pass it along. And it's very important that we catch ourselves, because being a parent, if we want to be a good parent, it's so much easier to be an authoritarian parent. It's so much easier. Being an authoritarian parent is just about reacting mindlessly to your emotions.
Yes.
And having people praise you for it. Be like, yeah, that kid is a bad kid and now goes to jail like he should. It's like that, And
yeah.
It's the easiest type of parenting is authoritarian parenting. And that's why our parents managed to have 10 kids between a mixture of neglectful and authoritarian parenting. Go outside, come home when it's night,
Yep.
There was actually in the US, and I heard that there was in the US an ad that passed at 10 o'clock at night saying, do you know where your kids are? Just in case you didn't see them coming yet, go and get them. So that's a mixture of neglectful parenting and authoritarian, which is like, you are here to serve me. You are here to do what I say. And I don't care what you feel. I don't care what you want. This is my house, my rules. And this is not why we have kids. This is not the way. I truly want to believe that no one wants to raise their kids like that.
Yeah. Well, and I will say for anyone watching, that is how I was raised. And I had one of my friends actually pointed out that my mom was using me as a personal servant. And whether like there's no hate towards her, no judgment or anything, because she might have not even been cognizant about it, because who knows, right? We all do things subconsciously, again, how we are raised, our habits. But when my friend pointed it out, boy, did I have resentment towards her. Like that created a thing. And there's so many things where it's just, if we know better, let's do better. I'm assuming my mom never knows. She loves me to pieces. She would never do anything to hurt me, but that did cause some sort of thing between us for sure. So just people watching, these things really do have an effect, and they can damage relationships. And you get older and you think, oh, I don't understand why our relationship's strained. Well, there might be some things in the past, and so just to have that awareness.
People that are now in nursery homes, and then they're like, why doesn't none of my kids visits? Yeah, maybe you spanked the hell out of them the whole childhood. Maybe you were like always really pushy and screaming, and why would they have a relationship with you now, And also, it's very important, this is what you were saying about having a resentment to our parents. It's very important to always remember that our parents, like us, they are also imperfect humans.
Yes.
It's not weird to say, my parents are really nice people. I love them. They did the best they could with the tools they had. They raised me in so many ways that it's nice that I'm passing along to my child some values, some beliefs that I love. And they also did some things that are crappy, and I don't want to pass that along to my child. And why is this so hard for people to do? I don't understand.
That's exactly it. And we won't get into it today, but there is a point of forgiveness and letting go of the past. A lot of us like to cling to the past. We won't get into that. FYI, that leads to depression. So, 60% of us on antidepressants, so we might want to ponder that. But that's another discussion. So we are going past our time a little bit. So I would like to just mention something for people watching first is, as a spanker myself, that's how I grew up. And when I got that rescue dog, I had to learn not to spank. And even the dog we got after him was a emotionally soft breed, where the breeders told us positive discipline only, they will shut down. And I did try and spank him because that's what I was used to. And sure enough, I assume this happens with kids also, where he would literally, once we got too aggressive, even if we started yelling, you could see him shut down. He would just like cower, and the mind goes blank, and it's like they're just trying to survive whatever's about to happen. So I will say that is my background, and I, with the rescue dog, never once disciplined him negatively in that fashion. I never hit him ever because of his background, and I did respect that for him. We might have argued, which if you ever know a dog to yell back at you, that was him. So that was funny. But my point of all this is, if I can, from my spanking background, and back in the day, I believe this was a good technique because it's how I was raised. I learned I could raise and help this little pup, this rescue dog. And my other big guy, what I saw that negative the spanking did to him, we turned away from that and got a little nicer, a little less aggressive, and all these things. So if I can make these changes, guys, it's not easy, but anyone can make it. You just have to be determined enough. So I hope if someone's watching and they think, oh, I'm just exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, whatever, this seems like too much work. It's not. And the payoffs of it are amazing. And you are capable. You just have to decide it's worth it. Because again, I made that change, and I'm a fairly assertive, stubborn person. So I just want, I'm going to say most people are less stubborn than me. So if I could do it, you could do it.
Yeah, I just want to add, it's not necessarily easy, but what else are you going to do? Like, what type of relationship do you want to have with your child? What life skills do you want to teach them? What what do you want to teach them? How do you want them to grow? What type of grown-ups do you want them to be? And it's not about being perfect either, but it is trying to do the best we can.
Yes. And that's, yeah, there is no perfect. This whole, that word should be like stripped from the dictionary. There is no such thing as perfect. Yeah, I'm sure it drives you nuts as much as it does me. So just to wrap up, how can people, I'll put everything in the descriptions afterwards, all the links and stuff, but how can people get a hold of you? What sort of programs, what sort of yada yadas do you have to offer? Tell us everything.
So I will give you the link to that guide. So if people want to know how to bring your child from the tantrum to the cooperation, there you have all the steps. And if anyone listening has a small child between the ages of 3 and 6, I run a community on Facebook, a free group. And there's a lot of support for parents of small children. It's called Parents of Preschoolers. And if you have a child in any other age, you can follow me on any social media, because many of the things I say, as we were talking about now, they can apply to everyone, regardless of age, even adults.
Yes. Yeah, because a lot of what you talk about, I literally do with my adult, full-grown clients. So it is very interesting to just remember that, yes, they're developing, they're children, but they're still tiny humans, and it's all the same things that we need to learn. It's just such a neat conversation we had. I'm very thankful. I feel like we have a lot of discussion left, so maybe we'll have to plan another one, maybe in a couple months or something. I had wanted to bring up the modeling, because that's something I tell my clients and my group about, like, take self-care for yourself to teach your kids about it. So I did want to touch on that, but we didn't have time because we got off chatting about so much. So yeah, maybe we'll have to do this again. Is there anything else before you go that you'd like to add?
Just want to say about what you said, the hashtag, this is one of my favorite hashtags, children are people, because we have to remember that children are people. It's very important. They are not, we don't treat children worse than we treat our mailmen. We treat them as the persons we love the most in the world.
Isn't that, yeah. And again, it's like, these are all things, we know all this. We've just never thought about it like that before. Yeah, it's very enlightening. I don't quite know all the words, but it's just switching the perception. I love it. It's very, very intriguing. Yeah. All right, wonderful. I want to thank you so much for coming and telling us all this wonderful stuff. And I know there's just, like, I can tell we just like scratched the surface. So yeah, thank you for sharing what you did today.
Thanks for having me and letting me share also. I think that's an important message to share.
Yes, we'll say, even if, so my job's not gone in the future, but it will make my job a lot easier if this stuff is learned as a child.
I think they will have other problems, like that we are not thinking now. They will have other ones.
What do they say? You solve one problem and two more spring up?
Yeah. Like that, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, have a very amazing rest of your day. And it's Friday, so a very wonderful weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.